Hello everyone, welcome back to HSC Talks. Today's episode is a special one called Mesa, Redonda, and we are here celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and I'm going to go ahead and let the students introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Ayana Ponce and I am a second year student at TCOM.
Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Segovia. I'm also a second year at TCOM.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Jesus Tamayo. I'm a second year at TCOM.
Hey guys, my name is Linda Ramos and I'm a third year pharmacy student.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for being here and for joining us today. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Can you all tell me a little bit about your journey to HSC?
I can go ahead and start, I guess. Well, I didn't know that I wanted to go into medicine, or better said, I didn't know the path to becoming a doctor. So I grew up in a traditional Mexican household, and education was always a big focus. Like my dad always wanted us to go to, pursue a higher education because he wasn't able to. And I thought I wanted to do engineering because when I came to the United States when I was 5 years old, I didn't know English. So the only thing that I could do in school that I could understand and was good at was math. So I thought I wanted to do engineering, and it wasn't until my husband got eye surgery and I had to take care of him for a couple of weeks that I really felt fulfilled taking care of him, and I started researching like the path to becoming a doctor. I really thought DO really resonated with my values, and I came across HSC and now I'm here and I'm very thankful to be here.
I think for me, it's all started with a purpose. I started in pharmacy kind of on a whim, it was just a job just to get by, although I knew I wanted to do healthcare in general, but I just wasn't sure. And so after a few years of working as a technician at a pharmacy, all those patient interactions that I had with everyone in the community, but mainly the Hispanic population, just being able to help them understand like their medications and why they were taking what they were taking, and to helping them understand their disease state, and seeing the pharmacist's role as far as, in the community pharmacy, I thought I could make a difference. And, I spent about 6 years kind of not doing anything, just wishing that I could do it. But I feel like growing up in a Hispanic household, you really see those around you and you're like, okay, well, that's what I'm capable of. And so no one in my family had ever, pursued a higher education past high school. So I kind of limited myself to what they had accomplished for the longest time. But helping those patients in the pharmacy and like seeing the impact that I was making as a technician alone, it just kind of pushed me to, pursue pharmacy. And so Fort Worth is home to me. So HSC was really the only option because, like the culture here, the community, my family, everything is here. So yeah, I'm thankful to be here too, for sure.
So growing up, I was always pretty interested in the sciences, but like a typical kid, had many different career changes, mental career changes, and but being a physician was always on the back of my mind. It wasn't until I got to high school and college where I had the opportunity to volunteer at some free clinics that predominantly served uninsured or even undocumented patients. And it was there where I also had that moment of thinking I can make a difference here. If I'm just here to support or observe or translate, that's usually what I would do. I saw how much of a difference that made when physicians and their patients could communicate better. And even though I didn't know sometimes what I was translating, but I knew the words and the terminologies, and it made me feel happy to be there, even though I was just an observer a lot of the times. So with that, that's when I knew I was going to apply to medical school at some point, and I'm really happy that I got to go to a med school that really puts that emphasis on taking care of their patients and not just their symptoms, but how else we could help them outside of the doctor's office. Yeah.
Yeah, my path, I'd say, was a similar way. I after high school, I lived in Guatemala for a couple of years, and there I just saw kind of, a different side of life than I grew up, in a small town in Southeast Texas. And so coming back, I worked at a doctor's office doing paperwork, and I was one of the only people that spoke Spanish there, and so they needed a translator, and that really kind of like Ayana said, that really had a big impact on how I, approached medicine, how I thought I could serve others, especially, Latinos in the community. And so from there, I went to college and I studied, and actually didn't even like biology during high school. Okay. Like, it was probably my least favorite subject. And so, so I, just like all of us here, we took our big tests and applied, and I'm so grateful to come here to HSC and live in Fort Worth, which has been really great to me so far.
Were there familiar challenges when pursuing a graduate education?
There were for me, for sure. I think whenever you're applying to any graduate program, it's difficult, especially when you don't really understand the journey you're about to embark on. And then, it's nice to have the support from those around you to understand what you're going through and to give you advice and all that. And being the first in my family to go, like, I feel like I didn't have that, like everyone else did. And so for the longest time, I kind of dwelled on that. And I realized, what, somebody has to break the cycle. So I ended up really just leaning on my preceptors, or I guess not preceptors at the time, but my pharmacy manager. And, they were guiding me on like what to do. And I contacted UNTHSC to see what the requirements were and all that. So I really had to be resourceful, and even if I didn't have the resources immediately, I had to, find it on my own. So those were my challenges.
Yeah, resilience.
Yep.
I think one challenge that I remember thinking of when I was younger was how there was always a misconception that you had to have lots of money saved up to be able to go to school. So sometimes it felt out of reach to be able to become a physician or become any kind of professional. And I'm really thankful that I realized that that really isn't true, because you can get loans and it's okay, because you will be fine after that. Or there are a lot of different programs that can help you pay your way. You could save up a little bit of money and that will go a long way in the future. So that was one of the challenges, was just getting out of that thinking that, oh, I can't go to this school, I can't become this because we can't afford it. So, yeah.
For me, it was more so that I didn't have a role model that I could go to and talk to about like the simplest things, or now they appear simple to me now that I've gone through like applying to financial aid every semester, right? Like, it seems so simple now, but back then it was very difficult, and my parents didn't understand. They didn't know how to work through a computer. I didn't even have a computer growing up, so that was difficult in itself. In fact, when I moved, because I got married super young, I got married at 18, and I was going to college in Arizona, and then I went to college in Colorado where my husband was stationed, but I didn't know how to apply or how to transfer my credits from Arizona to Colorado, and I didn't know that you could do it on the computer, so I ended up missing a semester because I didn't know, and I didn't know who to talk to, but I learned along the way, and now I help my siblings, do the financial aid, and I'm there as their kind of like guide, so that makes me happy.
I was lucky enough to have my father, he's an immigrant from Mexico, and he was very supportive of us, going to college. I have two older siblings and a younger sibling, and he always supported us to prepare to go to college. I had no idea, however, like how the application to medical school worked, and so that was, and none of my immediate family members or none of my cousins had ever gone to medical school, and so figuring that out was a challenge. And honestly, it took a lot out of of me. I also got married at a fairly young age, so it was hard sometimes on our family, my wife. and but realistically, like it all turned out really great, and I'm really glad to have, made it here and learn the things I'm learning right now.
Sure. So it sounds like resilience, grit really got y'all to where you are now.
Yeah.
And, even if there was a lack of resources, whether that's money or support systems or people to rely on, y'all really, fought to get here. And I'm happy to see that, especially in the Latino community. So,
Yeah.
Our next question is, how welcoming is Fort Worth to the Latinx community?
Yeah, well, I can go ahead and start. We were talking about this too, and when we first moved here, I didn't know anybody in this area when I first came here. Barely knew people.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from El Paso, Texas. So I grew up on the border. My family is also from Mexico, and I got to see both sides of the cultures, and it's been a really great experience to keep that close to me. So when I came here, of course, I was like, well, where's the good food that I like, or where are the places where we can see some good shows or listen to music that I'm familiar with and I really love. So thankfully I have been able to explore some places here. So I've never had a problem being here. You just did have to look sometimes or get recommendations from other students on where they like to go and what they like to eat, and it's been very nice. So I'd say yes, I've been very welcomed here.
Yeah, I'll second that. I haven't found a place that isn't welcoming yet, and I hope I don't find a place that's not welcoming, right? But I always find myself going to like little carnicerias, because it just reminds me of when I was younger and we would go with my parents. And I mean, even now I go to the carnicerias because that's where you get the good meat. But it just feels really nice to be surrounded by, those that look like me or speak the same language as I do. But even so, like in other parts of Fort Worth, I've always encountered very welcoming individuals. So.
Yeah, so I've been here in Fort Worth about 12 years now, so I call it home. There's a lot of spots here in Fort Worth, and even here, Dallas is not too far away from here, especially there, but a lot here. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, of La Gran Plaza. It's like a huge Mexican mall. It's a mini Mexico inside that mall, but it's so nice because a lot of Hispanics see it as a home away from home. And so it's really nice to see parts of Mexico or the Hispanic culture in general highlighted here in Fort Worth. You definitely see it throughout the city.
Oh, I kind of want to add on that not just in the city, but here on campus, I have seen there's a lot of things that you don't have to be a Hispanic student to participate in the cultural events, and that's something I really appreciated. There's constantly events happening here, and I love going to them, and I love coordinating them now that I'm a second year. And it's really nice. It's really beautiful to participate in other groups' activities. And then when the Latino Medical Student Association is hosting their activities, they also come over and appreciate the food, appreciate the music, and just appreciate each other's company. So that's been really nice.
Supporting one another. And I think the last question is, how important is representation in the community?
Well, lately I've been one thing that I've learned is volunteering at a clinic that's sees predominantly Hispanic population. I feel like going in there and being able to converse with them and it must make them feel different than going to someone who can't communicate 100%, because there's a lot lost in translation, and that's not just like translation of like the language, but also just like the cultural and norms. So I feel if we're able to communicate and connect better with the patients, and I think that there will be better outcomes in the long run.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's very important to have representation because it's a way for our patient to feel like they're being heard. And also that patient-doctor interaction is a little bit easier because there's no, no language barrier. And also culturally, because sometimes like it's really hard for the patient or the doctor to understand if they're not culturally aware themselves that there are other things that may be stressing the patient, like financially, culturally, and just having that in mind, I think we can take better care of our patients.
Do you ever experience anyone who's hesitant to go in? So that's pretty big in my family, where they are not going to go to the doctor unless they are like on the floor
my
dying.
parents.
Their
Yes.
last option is to go to the hospital or the doctor, versus those type of, primary care where you get a checkup every
It's
month
so
or every
funny
week,
because
every year.
just this past weekend I was talking to my parents about this, and they were telling me that they had some sort of cold coming in, and I'm like, oh, you should go check that out, and they're like, no, I'll just drink my té de chamomile,
Manzanilla.
the manzanilla. and it's so funny because when I start feeling a little sore throat, I'll drink some tea myself, and it's so funny because they're like, oh, you're gonna be a doctor but you're gonna drink tea. I'm like, yes, that's just part of my roots. You can't take that away.
I have the same problems.
Yeah, I feel like growing up, my parents and Hispanic culture in general, they resort to homeopathic remedies, like the té de manzanilla and things like that. And so I feel like having someone that's accessible here in the community who speaks your language, understands your culture, it just kind of takes down that barrier of going to the doctor or even going to, the pharmacy and asking the pharmacist who understands what you're going through, hey, what should I take for this? So I feel like, our representation in the community is super important just to, basic healthcare needs. And that's what we're there for.
I think diversity or representation in the medical field really is a big deal, because we're not here to say that you have to be Hispanic to treat Hispanic patients, right? It's just, it helps in some ways, but if you're not, it's also important to just be considerate of your Hispanic patients and what their beliefs are. And I've seen that a lot here at school. I've taken up a position where I get to teach medical Spanish on volunteer time to students, and I've loved seeing the turnout for these classes, because it's people who are taking times out of their schedules to be better physicians for their future patients. And in some situations it might be life or death, right? The way you communicate things to your future patients. So I have loved having that job here, and it's all about patient education to me, in addition to breaking down those language barriers. So I hope to continue doing that in the long run. Yeah.
Alrighty, I want to thank y'all so much for participating in today's episode, and thank y'all for watching today's episode, and we hope to see you next time on HSC Talks.